Hi, and thank you all for joining us today. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I'm super excited. And again, just to reiterate, welcome. You are watching us. The channel name is Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. And of course, we're broadcasting on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the West Coast and 10. Oh my goodness, how could I forget that? Anyway, you just heard it. So let me get started. Today, I'm very excited because we have a guest with us today who is a UFO authority and has been doing this research for many decades. His name is Joe Montaldo. And there's no one better to guide us through this complex and often controversial subject than Joe. And he's also the co-founder and international director and spokesperson of ICAR, which stands for the International Community for Alien Research. And Joe brings an unparalleled depth of knowledge and over 3 decades of dedicated investigation in the UFO arena. And of course, topics like alien abductions and many of the hidden aspects of ufology. He's also the voice behind the impactful radio show like UFO Undercover. And of course, he is the owner and chief officer of this entire network of UPRN. So I'm super excited to be able to speak with him. This is actually my first interview with him, and it's airing on Friday. And as I mentioned, we have 2 shows a week. One is on Thursday, which is at 5 p.m. live Eastern Standard Time. And the other one airs on Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm very grateful for Joe to do a pre-recording with us to air this coming Friday. And of course, you'll see it all over social media. I will blast it everywhere. So, of course, subscribe, hit that like button, and support us in every way. And of course, support the network. But without further ado, let me bring Joe up on stage. Hey, Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So excited to be able to talk to you. So, of course, there's a lot for us to dig into, but I wanted to kind of touch upon ICAR and discuss the mission and the evolution of it. And I thought maybe we could talk about some of the founding principles for folks that aren't too familiar with. You can talk about like how you started it, its growth, and any current objectives that you're working on right now.
You know, ICAR was a weird thing. So a long time ago, many moons ago, before the sun even set, we used to hang out in the chat room on Yahoo. A friend of mine had. And we had these crazy people used to come in there and act like idiots and tell us all kind of crazy alien stuff. And I was kind of like, these people are nuts. So back then, we formed a group called UFO Alien Phenomena. It was a chat group on Yahoo. We did a lot of chatting in there, and we liked it, and it was fun, but it wasn't giving us the research we made. So a friend of mine, November Hansen, and Geotree, and a few other friends of ours, Jason Wilson, who's passed away now, became the co-founders. And DeAndrew, who's also passed away now, we were the co-founders of the organization. And we started digging in. And before we knew it, we had over 1,000 members. We were like, wow, look at this. We got 1,000 members doing research. We had abduction cases coming in from all over. And before that, I was an investigator from MUFON. I was a senior field research investigator is what I was. I was actually good friends with Walt Anders. And just before I left, we had started an abduction. It was called abduction criteria. So we found 5,000 cases, and we went through all those cases. 5,000 we thought were legitimate cases, and we went through those cases and found basic criteria in each case that could be linked to the other cases. So in the future investigators could go, okay, are these people meeting any of these criteria? about half the criteria we've made public over the years, but the other half we still keep a very close guarded secret. Really and truly, ICAR is a privately funded organization. We're not a 501c. We're privately funded. And the reason why is MUFON taught me a lesson. So if I wanted to know information about MUFON, I can request and they have to tell me because they're a 501c. They also have to make all their financials public.
Right.
So ICAR doesn't have to do that. And if you want any of our data, you're going to have to drag my skinny or actually my big butt into court in front of the whole world because I own a radio media network and I'm going to make a big ass scene about it all over the place saying, oh, look, the government's dragging me in court for what I know about aliens. So it was kind of a way to keep us safe.
Yeah.
MUFON had gotten infiltrated with, I mean, their last 5 leaders. I don't know the last guy. I haven't talked to him. But the 4 leaders before them all had something to do with black ops in the government. It's one of the reasons MUFON had become the black hole of Calcutta. Whatever went in never came out. It was just a waste of time.
Yeah.
So we all started leaving, and we founded ICAR, which was the first strictly abduction organization in the world. Still the largest one in the world by far, but it was the very first one that concentrated on alien abductions. As far as we had a group that did sightings for us, and they tracked sightings, and we were also hooked up with Peter Davenport's people at Newfork out of Seattle, and then we kept up with all these people just so we had a place. So if we knew there was a heavy group of sightings in an area, we knew there were alien abductions in that area.
Yeah.
So we start looking around and looking around and looking around, and the more we found, the more information we got to. And along the way, we busted a few liars like Prophet Yahweh. Well, Yahweh, I know you still hate me, man, but you were lying through your teeth and you got busted. And well, he used to make balloons show up and stuff. And stuff.
Yeah.
So I actually sent a team to Las Vegas. I had 3 people lived in Las Vegas, but I brought some out from LA and some from Utah. I said he's going to do this in the park for this news company. I said, I want you to scour every inch, set up all around this place. I want to know what's going on. I want to know if it's just really an alien thing just popped in here. Turned out to be a remote control balloon.
Oh,
got lots of pictures of it. And so when the interview was over, I had one of my guys go up to the investigator who was there from the news network and hand him the tape of what we got. And he said, I was believing this guy. I said, a lot of people were believing this guy. I said, he's been on my radio show. He's been on other people's TV and radio shows. I said, he has conning a lot of people. I said, well, now you can be the reporter that breaks it out.
Yeah.
He said, you're going to let me do this? Yes. I said, I'm going to let you be the reporter. I said, you're right here in Vegas. I said, you can be the reporter that breaks it out. And he was so happy. He was like a cub reporter. And it made his career. It grew his career up. He was like, wow. So he still owes me favors for that one.
Oh,
but
yeah.
over the years, we found more and more people who were lying, more and more people who were telling the truth. Now, ICAR currently has 124,000 abduction cases on file. Now, when I say that, that's what we consider legit. That's not how many cases we've been through. That's how many cases we consider legit, 124,000 cases. I had a lady the other day said, well, how did you do that in 40 years by yourself? I said, well, I wasn't by myself. I said, I said at one point we had more than 60,000 people in the organization investigating that. I said, really, that's not even two cases per person. It's not really as much as you think it is. And we still have quite a few people. We're changing the organization now. I laid off a lot of people. That's a pleasant way to say I fired your asses, but really and truly, you get burnt out on this. Even I've gotten burnt out from time to time over the years. And so when people get to a point, I said, look, you're burnt out. You're not doing your job. People are coming to talk to you. You're just not interested. I said, let somebody take your spot. I said, if you want to hire somebody, if you want me to hire somebody, just let somebody else take over. I said, if you want to come back, that's not a problem. I said, because you're a good investigator, a good director, whatever they happen to be. I said, but you get burnt out. Some of my best friends got burnt out on this.
Oh, sure.
And then we had some weird stuff happen. I had 5 female directors who I had tasked for some special cases. All 5 got breast cancer within a week of each other.
What?
One of them passed. One of them didn't make a D. Andrews. Who was my personal keep me out of shit woman. She always made sure I was being honest because I had a tendency to reinvestigate cases.
Yeah.
And change them. which I'll get into after a while. But she always made me stay to the line. No, Joe, don't go get crazy. Don't go wandering off. Stick to the research. And if she didn't think it was right, then we'd argue like, oh my God, she's like my second wife, man, Jesus. And I mean, we'd fight all the time about stuff. And she was an expert on Roswell. So when I started messing around with Roswell, she wanted to hurt me. But anyway, it was the way the organization originally got founded. It had a lot of good, hardworking people in it. All of them were looking for the truth. We were all wanting to know if ET was really coming here. And if ET was really coming here, what was ET coming here for?
Right.
Why were they here? When did this start? When did that start? When did this start? So we started developing ways to find contactees who did not know they had been taken. That's what the blood type study is about. The blood type study was to help us to find people, or let me put it a different way. So if you're green-eyed, O negative blood, or RH negative blood, the chances of you being an abductee quadrupled.
Wow.
Just because you get that. And then there's a sheet on both sides of different things that if you regularly do or regularly are involved with, you're probably more like an 85% chance you're a contactee. So what that allowed us to do is to start finding people who didn't know they were. We would bring them in, tell us their stories. We'd ask them a bunch of questions. Sometimes we'd put them through hypnosis. Sometimes we'd put them with a counselor. But like 90% of the times, they turned out to be a contactee. And so did you know, like, I hate to do this to my paranormal friends, but if you have an interest in ghosts or demons or dragons or just any type of paranormal and you have a heavy interest in it, odds that are that you've been contacted are great.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, especially if you started out like this. You started out in one religion, then you switched to another religion, then you switched to another religion. You even dabbled around in the dark arts a little bit, maybe dabbled around the white arts, some wicked magic, stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you started chasing ghosts and demons and vampires, and you keep progressing. It's because you're looking for something. Subconsciously, you're looking. But you don't know why it is, because you just keep moving, keep going, keep moving, keep going. Because you were taken as a child. It's in your head. All of it's in your head. You've been taken since then.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
in
sense.
there. So you're trying to figure it out without knowing what you're actually trying to figure out. It makes it really hard for the people. And, my paranormal friend get upset with me when I say that. They're like, Joe, you can't say that about us. I'm not saying every paranormal person's a contactee. I'm just saying a lot of them are. It's it's like when I use that. One of my favorite things to do ghost chases is, did you ever stop to think that ghosts could be dimensional bleed through? Oh my God, I might as well just shoot him. Michelle gets a kick out of it because anytime her and I do a show together now, she's like, damn, dimensional bleed through ghost. And she's big in her ghosties. So, she is, after all, the Elvira of Canada. So
yeah, she is.
Yeah,
I've heard you call her that. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, yes. I don't know if anybody else can get away with calling her that.
I know.
One of my hosts
about the breast cancer thing. What was the correlation
between
the 5 women?
So I decided I wanted to launch an investigation into the reptilians. So we had the reptilians and the humans. We were getting these weird, different descriptions about it. So I said, look, so Dee Andrew November Hansen actually founded the case. And then she assigned cases to other people. Now, November was a school teacher. She handled any child cases we had. Matter of fact, when parents asked us to speak to children, she was the only one in the organization allowed to do it for lots of reasons, but she was the only one allowed to do it. So anyway, the more we got into this case, the more it seemed like, and she had handed it out to everybody, the more it seemed like they were feeling bad and they were getting cranky and they were getting bitchy. And I'd talk to them, they'd jump my ass. I'm like, girls, what? We'd have a meeting there. I'm like, well, look, let's just stop the case. No. And then Dee comes back. She calls me one night late. She said, I found out I got breast cancer, stage 4, no less.
Jeez.
So I'm like, Dee, she just broke my heart. And then November calls me 2 days later. I got breast cancer, stage 3. I'm like, what? So I just went ahead and called everybody else on the case and said, I need y'all to go get checked out. They all came back.
Was it radiation or what was it that was causing that?
They don't know. Doctor swears they don't know. Doctor said he had never even seen that kind of cancer before. It was now it's a fairly common. They found it, but back then they didn't know what it was. They gave Dee 6 months. I think she made it about 5 years. So I got to give her credit for that. The rest of them beat it. They broke it out and beat it, but they all said the same thing.
Yeah.
They were losing the battle. November, matter of fact, had the casebook underneath her bed where she slept underneath every night. All of them sent me the information to my home, and within 3 weeks, the cancer started turning around.
Wow.
So it started going away, and nobody could understand why. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. They hadn't even, the two of them hadn't even started chemo yet, and it had started turning around. So they were like, what the hell? So whatever this was that they were getting into, somebody didn't want them to know.
Oh,
Now I was lucky. I got hold to the cases, and what I did was I did a final look through to the case. I took all the key points out, and everything else got locked away.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's still sitting in a safe not far from me. It got locked, and it's actually a lead line safe, but I don't think that's what it was. It's just what the safe was made out of.
Yeah.
But I took all the key points out and all the really good points and assigned them to a different investigator group, and they've been handling it ever since without any problems. But the original cases, all 5 women with the original cases got cancer.
That's remarkable.
That's it's not. Even the doctor said it can't be a coincidence. He said it's got to be something y'all are touching or doing or being involved with. Exactly. They all lived in different states and in different cities. None of them smoked.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was so hard to deal with too, because for me, I just lost 5 of my top investigators, 5 of my best friends. I was like, shit. Dee, like I said, Dee was my confidant. I would talk to her about stuff, but now I didn't even want to talk to her about it because I knew how she felt and how she was feeling.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to put that kind of load on her. Every now and then she'd call me and tell me shit like, Joe, don't say that again. I'm like, what? She said, I heard you last night. Don't say that again. I'm like, what are you talking about, Dee? She said, Joe, you know damn good well what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, when I rewrote the Betty and Barney Hill case, she tore me up from one end of the country to the other end of the country. In the end, she started seeing it the way I did. But she tore me up in the beginning because, I was hardcore in that case, and it wasn't the way we were told. Matter of fact, I still remember George Norrie. Very first time on Coast to Coast, we're talking, and I said, well, I want to talk about the Betty and Barney Hill case. I rewrote it. He said, well, I'm telling you now, you're never going to make me change my mind about the Betty and Barney Hill case. So I go on like a 40 minutes through. We go to break, come back another 40 minutes through, and I stopped, and it's just like crickets. I said, well, George, what's up? He said, I think you changed my mind.
Oh my goodness.
He said, Joe, he said, you're the best research I have ever seen, man. He said, what else you got? Because I had redone Shag Harbor for him. And he was he's like, you just see things that other people don't see. I said, I'm a trained investigator. I said, but, my career before this put me in the way I could see these kind of things.
Right.
What
was your overall consensus about that? The Barney and Betty Hill.
Well, so I'll do the fast version, but I was reading the Betty and Barney Hill case one day, and I'm going through it, and then I had Barney's wife on, and I also had one of her good friends on. This is a long time ago, and there was something about the whole thing that just bothered me. So I called a friend of mine. I said, "Can I get hold to Simon's videos? I mean, Simon's recordings of the hypnosis." He said, I have the whole set. I'll send them to you. So he sends me over the whole set, and I'm listening to the set. And you hear Betty talk, and but Barney, you would hear this extreme stress, this fear. You never heard this out of Betty, not one time. But I mean, so I started investigating Barney. I come to find out they had a colonel living at their house, an Air Force colonel. An Air Force colonel, full bird colonel, just doesn't go around just meeting everyday people. Plus, let's not forget they were a black and white couple. Right. One of the very first ones. This is back in the 60s, not very acceptable back then. Yeah. He also was friends with 2 more full bird colonels that lived on the base. I'm like, Jesus, how does this guy know these people? remember, he was just a postman. Wasn't nobody
Right.
special. And then he got invited to the White House to meet the president. I'm like, let me get this right now. Guy's been taken by aliens. He's married to a white woman, and he's invited to the White House. I said, "Oh wait, man, something's just not right."
Yeah.
So I said, "I'm going to start at the beginning of the case." So at the beginning of the case, the Hills get up that morning at the hotel. They go across the street to have breakfast. So when you ask them, do they remember the hotel they stayed at? They said no. Even though they were sitting across the street looking at the sign, they still could not remember the name of the hotel. They left the restaurant and headed home. They could not remember the name of the restaurant they had breakfast at.
Wow.
Okay, so then they stop to ask for directions. Barney describes him as a tall, thin, black Irishman. Betty describes him as a short, fat, white guy. Both totally, absolute different descriptions of the same man. Given, okay, right off the bat, you're kind of like, oh, this ain't sounding too good.
Yeah.
So now we know they were probably abducted in Canada and re-abducted in the United States. So what happened was the real abduction happened in Canada. The military abduction happened in the U.S. Oh, everybody's like, well, prove it. It's not that hard to prove. First off, the thing that stopped the car sounded like two magnetic things, big magnets that came down and hit the car and just knocked all the electricity out. Remember, they said they came down, had wires and all connected to it and hit the car. Okay, I've never heard of that in any UFO case, even to now. Never. No. So then Barney describes it as Betty as 4 guys in black shoes, black pants, black shirts, and black duck-billed caps. Okay, I've never heard of any aliens being discovered there, but I have heard many black cops dressed like that. So then they loop their arms under, they walk them across the street, they walk up a ramp. Okay, UFOs usually don't have ramps, but they walk up a ramp, they bring them in there, they have swinging doors, sliding drawers, and pull down maps. Holy shit, that's period. That's 1965 period. That's what you're looking at. Then they describe 2 guys who sound like they're from the CDC, taking skin samples with razor blade, taking fluid samples with needles. None of the stuff they said sounded like a UFO experience. It sounded like a CDC experience. This was probably the first known military abduction we ever knew of, was right then and there. That's what had happened. Oh. So Betty describes it a pull down map. Now, Kathleen Maldron tried to come back later on and say it was not. It was a digital thing, but that's not what Betty said. On multiple occasions, either under hypnosis, she said it was a pull down map of the stars. Okay, first off, I can't see any race that can cross the space and time using a pull down map. Probably something on the wall they just touch and they touch, but not. And when you listen to other abductees, they don't talk about that. All the fluid and skin samples, all the samples they took, and by the way, they only took them from Barney. They did not take them from Betty. So that tells you right there, she's not a contactee. She was just along for the ride. It's unfortunate that later on she tried to put it in there, and it really made Kathleen Maldron mad because that's her aunt. But the truth is the truth. And she's not the one that had him. And even in the hypnosis, you hear the difference in their language. He is just like something's about to cut his head off, and she's all like, it's not even the same thing. So, the more I checked, the more it sounded like what happened in New Hampshire was a military abduction. It does not sound like an alien abduction. So if you go strictly by the criteria, that's what happens.
Don't they have her dress and it was ripped?
They said they did. They said they did. But they also said they did an analysis on the dress 30-something years after it happened. Sorry, you can't do that. That would be admissible as evidence anywhere.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden she said they found out where this constellation was on. They took the 3 stars she made and put them on a map, and then whoever did it found where the aliens were from. Well, I'm going to tell you a little secret. I can take a triangle right now and go to a star map and find that same triangle probably in 1 million places or more.
Sure.
I mean, when you're looking at the night sky, the constellations and everything, is just, unfortunately, that's not enough. More than that, though, she never had the jump off point. So she was at Earth. So she's assuming what she saw was Earth, but she never actually knew where the end point was. She never actually understood that. So, and the concept of the 3 stars she's seen could have been anywhere. It doesn't even mean it was the place where they came from.
Yeah.
And if it's the aliens that she thought it was, and they didn't come from there anyway. So the more you get into this case, the more you realize that what happened in the United States was a military abduction. Plain, simple, no more than that. And Kathleen Aldrin later on said, oh, there was lots of military abductions, just not that one. But that's the one that proves it was a military abduction.
So
because
was the military wanting to make it look like it was a UFO?
No, doesn't even sound like they were. It sounds like they came in on maybe some kind of blimp or something and took them.
Oh.
And they walked, like I said, it landed. They went up the stairs. They went inside. It sounded like some type of mobile lab. And we don't know if there was any adjustments made to the memory at that point. So as far as we know, the government could have came in and made an adjustment to their memory at that point, especially if they used like a mix of sodium anisole, sodium pentothal, and a good hypnotherapist or telepathic hypnotherapist. Either way, it would have been really easy to affect memories. But it doesn't even sound like they did that. It sounds like when you listen to the hypnosis, it sounds like that's what happened, because there's actually 3 sets of memories. There's the abduction memory, the military abduction memory, and then the memories of what just actually happened in their life, like the hypnosis and stuff like that. So no one could understand that at first. And then Dr. Simon said, no, that's what it was. And I agree with him wholeheartedly, because I've done hypnosis quite a lot in my life. That's what it was. So when you compare those tapes side by side, her and him, it's like night and day. There's no doubt. And this is something else no one stopped to think of. The reason he had friends, these colonels, was somewhere when he was young, he had an experience. His mom probably took him to a nurse or psychiatrist or something. They labeled him right then and there. That went through the system, and somebody in the military government realized that he was a contactee. They sent these colonels to keep an eye on him. That's why he moved in with the guy who was living in his house. No colonel needs to live with this guy, some postman house. Colonels make a buttload of money. And they're not, and they just don't make friends with anybody. And none of them were black; they were all white, which makes it even weirder. So this black man made friends with all these high-ranking white guys in the 60s. That's very questionable. At best, that's very questionable. And so I'll go ahead.
They knew he was abducted at one point, and the government stepped in, and they did their Milab thing. And then what were they looking for? Like any biological changes?
Yeah, so they tagged him. So they knew he had been being taken. They were just waiting to get a fresh time. So the government could never just catch him right away. Well, this time they got him within 12 hours of the abduction. So that means there had been no baths, no showers, none of that. They knew there'd be residue on there. They took lung samples. They wanted to check the air. If there was any kind of different air in his lungs. They checked for everything, but they didn't do it to Betty, just to Barney.
Yeah.
And she actually admits to that. And then she talks about the guy with the big nose gave her a paperback book.
Yeah, I remember that. And he took it back though, right? They wouldn't let her take it, right?
So, she couldn't take it off the ship.
Yeah.
And so in my 44 years of research and abduction, no one's ever been given a book. Download, yes, right smack into your head, but no books ever. I can't. We've looked. There's just no cases like that. Matter of fact, most of what Betty said, with the exception of Travis Walton, and I'll explain that in a minute, there was no other cases like this one. Because Travis, we also know Travis was a handoff case. And as far as we know, this could have been a handoff case. We don't know, because they didn't actually know who gave them directions. We don't know if this wasn't a handoff case. So when we say a handoff case, in Travis Walton's case, they knew he was on the mountain. I asked him that one night, and he got all white-faced on me and stuff. He said, what do you mean they knew I was on the mountain? I said, Travis, here's a UFO, probably with advanced scanners because it's got to fly in space. Here's a big, noisy truck with lights going, it's got squeaking, squealing, chainsaws going, and you don't think they knew you weren't on the mountain? And he's like, son of a bitch. I said, you don't think they knew you versus the other guys? I said, they made them guys stay in the truck because the only one they were after were you. And I said, let's not forget, because we found out later, there was a CIA guy on the mountain with him.
No way.
Oh yeah. Now remember, all of these people passed their polygraphs, all of them.
Yes.
So what happened was, is he was picked up, he was brought in the ship, and they took him away, and then they dropped him off so that he would be. It was called a handoff. So when you listen to him talk, the craft lands in a hangar. We're talking like a human hangar. They get out, his own words, two guys in white outfits with helmets on, speaking English, not telepathic, but because everybody else was telepathic, these were speaking English. When I asked him, does it look like somebody from the CDC? He said, I was pretty sure that's who it was, Joe. So in his case, they knew he'd been taken because the guy on the mountain that night, the CIA guy, tipped him off. The aliens dropped him off to them in that hangar. They did whatever they were going to do, and they did a soft telepathic scan, and they dropped his ass off.
Wow.
So that's two we know that are handoffs. We have other cases that are hands off too, but they're just not as famous. But these kind of cases are important because it lets us know that there is some interaction between ET and Uncle Sam. You know, not a huge interaction, but some. They're allowing us, and they did basically the same thing they did to Betty and Barney Hill. They took samples with needles. They took razor scalpels. They took samples of his skin, samples of his hair, all done with conventional equipment, none with extraterrestrial equipment. And he knows the difference because he was on board the ship. So he had actually seen equipment that was extraterrestrial versus what's standard. He doesn't like to talk about it because when I push him, it makes him realize that he's been being taken a lot longer than just that one night.
Right.
There's no such thing as a one-time abductee. So, and that's another thing that gets people mad at me. They're like, prove it. I said, what do you mean prove it? Prove there's no such thing as a one-time abductee. That's what he was. I said, want me to really prove? He's like, yeah. I said, here's one for you. I said, you remember the Phoenix Lights? Yeah, I remember Phoenix Lights. So you know how many people live in Phoenix? Yeah, like 2.5 million. I'm like, yeah. I said, do you know how many people actually saw the Phoenix Lights? Even though they were being broadcast on TV, less than 14,000.
Yeah.
So why didn't the other 2 million see it? I said, worse than that. Mexico City, 1998, I think it was. 22 million people living there. UFO hovers over the city for 24 hours. Big one. 1 million people saw it out of 22 million. Now Jaime Maussan was on TV talking about this thing. Other news people were, the mayor seen it, the police chief seen it, all kind of pastors and priests seen it. But yet 21 other million people didn't see it. And they went out and looked. Why is that? Because you can't see the UFO if you've never been in one. If you haven't been, whatever it is, that's whatever those fields are made out of, once you've been inside, you can see them after that. And we've put that to the test with contactees who have been taken, send them to hot spots where we know there's UFOs, and they see them. Matter of fact, Gulf Breeze, Florida, went down there with 60 people, 30 contactees, 39 contactees, right? Went and sat on the beach. 30 of them watched these people being abducted. 30 never saw anything.
No kidding.
Yes, it was.
Is that like a mass hypnosis thing that's going on, or is it just you have this ability once you've been?
I think once you've been inside the field of the ship, whatever the ships use to make themselves invisible, once you've been exposed to it, you can see them. I guess, and that's sheer guessing. There's some evidence for it, but not enough yet to conclusively say. But we do know, because here's another one for you: Belgium, big, massive triangle flying over Belgium, big over the city. Sent F-16s out to shoot the damn thing down. Sent 5 F-16s. One of them saw it. Nobody. It never showed up on anybody's radar. Only one pilot saw it. The other 4 didn't. On the ground, 26,000 people seen it out of, I think, 14 million.
Jeez,
there's got to be a reason for that. I mean,
Yeah, it makes so much sense when you bring it to light like that. What has your experience been in terms of contact with any of these ETs? Have you had any personal experiences yourself?
Yes, I have over the years. I've see, for me, it was very weird when I first got into this. Hold on a second.
Yep.
When I first, sorry, it's just somebody coming in. When I first got into all of this. See, this was weird for me because I joined the Navy. I joined the Navy. I'm in the Navy, and all these pilots kept telling me about weird shit they seen in the skies and other weird stuff. And I get out to service, to my 9 years special force. I get out to service. People would just come up. I was working one night. I was going to school, so I was working at a convenience store, midnight shift, right? People come in and just start telling me about being alien abducted. I'd go to other places. People would tell me about this, and it got. Matter of fact, I'm in my dentist chair. I've been knowing this lady for 40 years. I mean, she was 40. I've been knowing her for about 20 years. And she's working on my teeth, and she starts telling me about this alien abduction that happened to her. And I'm thinking, no way. And it just kept happening. And then when I met my wife, it was the same thing. She started telling me about this and other people. I'm like, okay. I said, this is just getting to be too much, because I kept saying, all you people are effing crazy. Go see a shrink. So that's when I got to move on. That's when we made all the criteria list. And I was sitting down one night and I was reading through the list, and I'm like 2/3 of this list I've experienced. I'm like, shit. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to accept it. I'm just not going to accept it. I was being hardcore. I was not going to accept it. And we're in Gulf Breeze, Florida, my wife, and my son, and myself. And this weird thing comes over the top of us. We're sitting right next to Eglin Air Force Base. And I'm thinking it must be from the base. No. So my son goes, oh, it's our little bug-eyed friends coming to visit. I'm like, what the? I'm not going to say the language I use, but I'm like, son, shut up. And then I got this weird shivering, weird freezing feeling. It rained, and all of a sudden we're all dry. I'm like, what the? And so we get back to the hotel room. My wife pulls up her sleeves. She's got these diamond patterns on both arms. Like, if you've ever seen those diamond look grill things, it looked like someone took it, heated it up, and wrapped it around her arms and left these burns. And when you touched them, it didn't hurt her. It was really strange. And then they were gone the next day.
Wow.
That was it for me. I said, okay, I got to see what is going on here. And the more I looked, the more I realized I had been being taken. And I had talked with my sister, my mom, and other members of my family. And they were having a lot of the same strange stuff I was. And everybody in my family is very telepathic. That's why I could never lie to my mom. She always knew where the hell I was, what I was doing. It used to make me crazy. I'm like, Mom, I'm going out with my friend. She said, don't lie to me. You're going to go see such and such. I know exactly what you're doing. I'm like, Mom, she said, no. She said, you can go, but I'm just telling you, you're going to be with such and such and such and such, and you're going to go down the river, and that's what you're going to do. And I'm like, are you listening to the phone? She said, I don't have to listen to the phone to where you are. You're my son. I was like, oh, okay. My sister hated it even more. Because it wasn't just her, it was me too. But my grandmother was like that. My grandmother was a tarot reader and was damn good at it. And I was always anti any of that stuff when I was young. I was like, whatever. This is all BS. And then somewhere around 26, 28, I started getting this. I would just see stuff about people. I don't know how to explain it. Like, perfect explain. A good friend of mine, we were talking one night. And I reached over to grab her hand, to grab the drink out of her hand, actually. And I said, you can't have that. You're pregnant. And I said, you know what? And then I got this weird feeling. I said, you don't need, we were going to Stevie Nicks concert, actually. And I said, you don't need to come with us. Because we had front row seats. She said, I am not missing the concert. I said, sweetie, I said, you trust me on this. Just don't go. I said, I'll pay for the tickets. Just don't go. She's like, Joe, you're never like this. I said, so I told her, oh man, Mike, I said, dude, don't let her go. I said, I just got this feeling if she goes, it's going to be bad. And then I told him in his ear what I thought it was, and he freaked because they already knew she was pregnant. They just didn't know. I didn't. I knew. And so she was mad. I mean, they stayed home, and she went into a miscarriage.
Oh, goodness.
Not only did she go into a miscarriage, she had a bleeder inside when they tried to get the show. So she was bleeding out. The doctor told her, if you wouldn't been within 5 minutes of the hospital, you would be dead today. And she told her I was going to the concert. He said, you'd have been at the concert, you'd have been dead. There would have been Charlotte, would have been poof. They would have never got you out of the building before you bled out.
Oh my goodness. So obviously you have a lot of the intuitive gifts that your family passed down.
I've had some bad ones. Like I can tell usually I can see when someone's going to die within a year or two of their death. way too many times. I try to block it out. Yeah, I actually tried drinking it away one time, but that didn't work.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know. It was a very weird thing. It's like my mom when she got sick. She was telling my sister, she's already said, Steph's mom's got a year. And she's
Oh,
like, and my mom, don't tell your sister. She said, I know you knew. Don't tell your sister. Because she had cancer in 3 different locations and she didn't want to get treated for it. And I was like, she said, how did you know? I said, same way you always know, Mom. Same thing with my dad. I knew 2 years before he was going to die. I knew how he was going to die, where he was going to die. It was, I had pretty much seen the whole thing. It was crazy, but people I don't know, people I barely know. It just, like one of my stepdaughters, she grabbed my hand one day and I just seen in like 25 years of life, told her what she was going to do, how she was going to do it. Said, you're going to meet this big goofy ass bastard of a guy. You're going to marry him. Y'all aren't going to have any kids. And I said, after about 30 years, 26 years, y'all going to probably split up unless you can get past this. This is probably going to be an alcoholic drug problem. Sure enough, it's exactly what happened. Matter of fact, I just seen her the other day. She goes, I have no idea. There's no way you could have known that. And I said, well, I told you.
yeah.
And it freaks people out. And I don't like it because I don't like telling people stuff like that. I'd rather know you're going to win the lottery or get some money.
Yeah. But
Something good.
you must feel like compelled to tell them, right?
A
Like
lot
you
of
have
times I am, yeah. A lot of times. I mean, there's been times I haven't said anything, but there have been times. And, you know, that's another thing. So one of the criteria for being an abductee is being empathic.
Sure.
So if you're not empathic or telepathic, you're not a contactee. We're pretty sure, not 100% sure, but we're pretty sure that only contactees and abductees are telepathic. We've actually proved it, but it makes people so mad when we do it. I stopped doing it. So, and I tell this to anybody: go get a deck of cards. Like Uno cards work the best for this because they're colored and numbered. I said, get a deck, go to your local mall, say, hey, we're doing telepathic tests. We'll give you an ice cream or something if you come take it. Most people take it anyway because they just want to see. I hate to say this, but most people don't even get it right 50% of the time. It's less than that. It's usually like 30, 70. Yeah. Same thing with a flip of a coin. There's actually a term for that. So, but the ones who don't. So I'm sitting there one day, I put the 2 cards in. She goes, orange, red, 5, 3. I'm like, what? And I flip them over, boom, boom. Every time I did, she said, oh, that's going to be, before I was even taking a card, she was telling me what they were. Outstanding telepath. Outstanding empath. I mean, just, and one of the giveaways, one of the tells for a contactee is, or I should say an abductee is, they're empathic and they don't know it when they're young or even when they're older until they experience what's causing this. So it's hard to make people understand, but when you're an empath, sometimes you're transmitting, sometimes you're receiving, sometimes you're both. Absolutely. But if you walk into a room and everybody in that room's mood changes, either good or bad, depending on what your mood is, you're an empath. Or if your mood changes to whatever the room's mood is, you're an empath.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've experienced that myself. I know definitively that's the truth.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting too, because I've spoke to Preston about criteria for, they don't like to call them abductions, but rather contactees, but
contactees or experiencers. They love the word experiencers.
Yeah, experiencer. But do you think that people are taken against their will, or are they mostly agreeable? Like when contact is made, is there an agreement between the contactee and
at one time I thought maybe, but when you meet some of these abductees, you know there was no agreement there. They are mad, they are hostile, they are angry. It's not people who made an agreement.
No, it doesn't sound like it. Do you think there are just different races of ETs that some are, have an agreement and some just are aggressive?
So this helps everybody. So there's really only 3 types of races that abduct people. It's the Greys, reptilians, and humans. But the Greys didn't come on the scene until about 3,000 years ago, or a little less. Reptilians and humans have been here since the start. And so there's lots of stories to help people with this. The Sumerians had the 7 creations of man, with the last creation of man being our forefathers. So they had created this race. Well, I might as well tell you the whole story. So the original story was the Sumerians talk about this race that came here. They built these 2 great white dome cities. The reason they built these cities was they could not breathe the air on this planet.
Right.
So they created a race just like themselves, but that could breathe the air, that was supposed to go out and do the mining and whatever. Well, that race was omnipotent. They're like bleep, bleep, you. Why are we doing this? We're just as powerful as you are. So they created the 7 creations of man. Some of them had eagle heads, some had dog heads. Anyway, there was several versions, and the last version was just like us. A little bit stockier, a little bit different. They could procreate, they could plow the fields, they could do things like that. But they never asked why they had to do it. They weren't sentient in the way we were. So the Sumerians talk about this group of reptilians that used to come down and steal their women, take them away, rape them, and then bring them back, and those women would have, the children were different. Well, when I first heard that story, I thought they meant different, like looked different. That's not what they meant. They meant acted differently. They had become self-aware. The Dogon talk about the Nemos, who were the reptilians who came down and did it. So these two races had no contact with each other, but yet they knew that these reptilians were taking the Sumerian people and bringing them back, doing this, and then sending them back. So Nemos have a word story about it, actually. And so now you have 2. Well, the Egyptians also write about it, so does the Mesopotamians. So we actually have 4 cultures now that talk about a society that was not the society today that the reptilians altered. So a couple of things about the reptilians: they have genetic DNA. Their DNA is genetic. I mean, not their memories are genetic. It's you're born with full memory is what it basically means. So anyway, these children that were born were different. They were brighter, smarter, faster, bigger.
Right.
And they decided they didn't want to be slaves anymore. So that was the first downfall of the Sumerians. They also think that some of them went over and became emperors because the Sumerian aliens were the human type aliens, were the ones that messed with them were human type aliens. Human aliens kind of look like us. If you look at us front on, they look just like us. If you turn their head like this, their head's this much longer than ours. It's kind of funny that several of the Egyptian emperors had that kind of head.
Yes, they did.
They said it was a disease, but then they couldn't explain why it was hopping around different parts that weren't related to each other, because there was several emperors that had it, several pharaohs that had it. So they couldn't explain that at all. But the contact with the Sumerians and the reptilians could. So it sounds like that they went ahead, and the Mesopotamians talked about the reptilians quite a lot. Actually, they're not the only ones. You'll see the Egypt too. It's like he's carrying a purse, big tall guy, reptilian face, but he's got long hair. That was some kind of hybrid. Nobody knows exactly what kind of hybrid they were, but they were definitely a hybrid.
Yeah.
So now we have an ancient world, 6,000 years plus. Most of this was probably much older than this, because we know that the blood type didn't change in about 40,000 years ago. So they're pretty sure all of this was actually before that. That unfortunately for us, we're stuck at 6,000 years because we think the ice age ended at 10,000 years and we were stuck at that. We couldn't go any further back. Well, recently the city they found off the coast of Cuba is about 16,000 years old. So that's older than the ice age. The 2 they found off of India that the tsunami showed were also about 16,000 years old. So that makes us a much older society and a more advanced society than we thought. So here we now have a different look at our own society. These people were more advanced, lived way earlier. It's like we went backwards for a while and then went forward again.
Right.
So the more you get into this, the more you realize that this race has been here for a long, long time. They've been messing around on our planet. Well, somewhere along the line, I guess once the reptilian went and came and stole some of the Sumerians' women and raped them, it pissed them off. They must have been getting closer to a war. Somewhere along, the council decided, you know what, the light beings actually decided, we're just going to send the Greys there and straighten this shit out. So the very first time I ever heard about the Greys, I thought they were like subservient to both races. That is not even close to true.
So they're not AI, the Greys, because I've heard theories.
The Greys are so if you look, this big reptilian, right? He's 7-8 foot tall, 700 pounds. This little 5 foot Grey, he will bow his head to him and walk sideways away from him.
Wow.
That's what kind of fear they have of him. Now the Greys come in 3, 6, and 7 or 8 foot, depending on what their hierarchy is based on their height, basically. Now they do have what I would call a cyborg gray. So the grays always travel in threes. It's just a thing they do. When they abduct, they always abduct in threes. So sometimes there'll be three of them, but those control the cyborg grays, which are usually in threes. So they look just like the grays, except half inside is machine, and the other half is gray. But that's the only ones they have. Once you get in the 6'5", 6 foot range, those are the ones who like come up and talk to us. They like to play good cop, bad cop. Sometimes they'll wear a cloak. They'll have red eyes and stuff. They like to play.
They're biologic beings. Then the taller one, yeah.
And the 7 foot ones, or the I don't know what you'd call. They're the ones that are the service the queen, which is around 9 foot. So they're there to service the queen. That's all they do. They're royalty, basically. Everything underneath that is basically subservient to those. But they're not a vicious, mean race. It's not who they are. They say several million years ago that the light beings came in from another galaxy, found this galaxy ablaze at war, found the grays, converted the grays into a race that could stop the war. So like the gray ships are organic. So the grays the organic ship can produce a blue plasma that the grays is absorb in their skin as food. The ship can absorb it as well as food. Humans can be immersed in it to heal them. It's very interesting stuff. And it took us a long time to figure out what it was, because people kept coming in telling us about this weird colored blue. You couldn't put it on the chart. It wasn't like that. Some kind of weird, sparkly, electrified blue color. It was crazy. So we started hypnotizing people, and then we started cheating. So ICAR figured something out that nobody else figured out. We can take 50 or 80 of our contactees, give them one question. None of them know each other, and say, just repeat that question. So next time you get taken, it beams it straight in their head. Since all three of the races are telepathic, they have a tendency to beam the answer back. Now, I have to warn people, it's not always fun and games, especially with the grays. They can get really pissy about it. The grays kind of like a proud papa when you do it the first couple of times. But when it's on questions that we're not supposed to know yet, they get pissy about it. And you can be punished for it in several different ways, actually.
Wow.
With different questions, we ask different questions. So this question we asked, what is the blue plasma? And we got the same answer from 88 people. Exactly, word for word, the same answer. So we learned that what the blue plasma was. They went in great detail about it. That's what was so interesting about it. There was a lot of detail came out of this one question. They told us how it worked, where it came from, how it was produced, what did the ship use it for, what did the grays use it for, and it answered a question that couldn't be answered before, because the grays are not actually gray. So when someone says I was abducted by a gray and they say it was like gray, like the color gray, they're lying, because that's not the color of grays. They're not that color.
Are they like a blue color?
Well, a lot of more blue color. So you have blue, white, and brown. You have. And anytime they absorb that plasma through their skin, it changes their color. It makes them look differently, but none of them look gray. The closest you can get to a gray is like when the white ones lose their color, they look kind of translucent. So do the blue ones. They look kind of translucent, but they don't look gray. They look more clear than that. It's weird when you hear people describe it. It's kind of funky, nasty, and weird at the same time, but they absorb that food through their skin, and when they do, it changes the color of their skin, because it goes through the entire body and it changes the color. When we found that out, we realized we had something that no researchers anywhere had ever even heard of. And ICAR's got a lot of firsts to its names, and a lot of it just gets stolen and used. A lot of the terms you hear, like downloads and all that, was all our stuff. But a lot of that stuff, there's a lot of stuff in the field today. Put it this way. When I started radio, hosting Wake Up USA 30 years ago, if I brought up alien abduction, matter of fact, here you go, Piola Harris, great thing. Brought her on a show, she wouldn't talk to me for 2 years.
Wow.
2 years. So I seen her in Roswell. I was at the 60th anniversary at Roswell. I walked up, said, Paul, I didn't mean to upset you. I gave her a big fat hug, and she started doing my shows again. Richard Dolan was anti any of this. He didn't believe in abductions. Now that's all him and Paula talk about. And matter of fact, all the terms they heard me use on my shows, they now use like they invented it. Yeah, so it does piss me off sometimes, but most of the time I just let it go, because if I really wanted to push it, we have copies of the audio. So, but you can listen how anti-abduction they were. Matter of fact, it was Paula Richard, Peter Robbins, and I forgot who else it was, came on my show and said, "Oh, you need to stop talking about this. You're giving ufology a bad name." I said, "No, I'm changing ufology into what it should be, research to what's actually happened." I said, "Who gives a shit about what's flying around the sky when you're going to never get to the truth chasing lights in the sky? Only way we're going to get to the truth is to meet the freaking aliens ourselves. And the only people doing that is the people being taken." Ooh, they got mad at me. But it's the truth.
It is the truth. What were you to like I mean, you've done thousands of abduction, investigated thousands of these cases, these abduction cases. So at the end of the day, what were you looking to do with that data? Did you want to take it to the government? Was it part of disclosure for you? Like, what was the grand picture here?
Really what I was doing was trying to figure out what the hell are they doing on our planet? Why are they here? Why have they been here for so long? Why didn't they just stop by and leave? And remember, Earth's not exactly on the spiral arm where all the aliens would be going by. We're way off the spiral arm. We're out in interstellar. We're just out in space. There's nothing around us. It's just like, okay, how did they even find us?
Yeah.
We're not that close to spiral arm where everything's going on. We're just out there. And it always made me wonder exactly how they found us. I mean, there is a theory, the Milky Way eats other galaxies. And right now it's eating the Sagittarius galaxy. And some people seem to think Earth may be from the Sagittarius galaxy, that we were deposited here along with some red dwarfs several billion years ago. If that's true, then maybe that's why they found us, because they seen it happen. Or maybe they're from here. See, people stop to forget, but the fifth planet was probably inhabitable, and probably with a big race, probably like the reptilians.
Yeah.
Mars was definitely inhabitable, and the Greys would have came from a planet like that. And Venus was inhabitable, and it would have probably been the humans. So, and then there's Earth. We don't even know what's going on Earth. So whatever happened, whatever caused a catastrophe of 65, 85 billion years ago, caused it for all of them. All four planets died at the same time. So if all four of them had life on them, where'd that life go? So you got to wonder, are they part of this solar system, or are they from a different one? There's no way to really prove that right now, but there is a way to prove that humans are not from Earth. Most people don't even want to talk about that. Man, I made a scientist somewhere a couple of months ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of theories about that, obviously.
Well, it's more than theories. So the optimal body temperature for a human to work in is 63 degrees Fahrenheit. That's Mars 55 million years ago. This planet's never been at that temperature. Also, the biological clock on this planet should be set to 23 3/4 hours, but yours is not. Yours is set to 24 1/4 hours, and the only planet with that is Mars. So there's two different things in our body that suggest that we're not from this planet, we're from Mars, or at least part of us came from Mars. And now that we found that tons of junk from Mars has landed on our planet, it's not that hard to think that maybe we did come from there, or whoever originally was there who got thrown off when a planet. There's two major things happened. They had that big gouge ripped out of it, and something hit one side and created Olympus Mons, which is the largest volcano in the galaxy. It's so tall that when it throws something, it just goes into space. It don't even come back down. That's why we get it. So if that's true, anything living there may have came here. Atlantis is gone. They may have been the progenitors of Atlantis.
Could be. It's funny how we have such an obsession to go back to Mars now.
It is. Well, it's because it's and then there's the other problem. I like to do this to my New Age friends. I said, they're always telling me about Gaia, this, Gaia, that. I said, Gaia's like, what the are you doing on my planet? Get out of here. You're not from here. You don't belong here. Why do you think I'm trying to kill y'all every chance you get? Hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, waves. He said, we're trying to get you off our planet. Go away.
That makes sense.
My New Agers get so mad at me when I tell them that. They're, Joe, you shouldn't say that kind of stuff. I'm like,
it could be true. I mean, did the government try to reach out to you for your data, or have you given it?
I have just in the last year, I've testified twice.
Wow.
First time, I can only tell you a little bit, but the first time was 12, 20, 28 hours. The second time was about 26 hours. Wow. So I get this weird call right after the Koresh, and I know why I got the call, because I tore up the guy on the Koresh guy who was saying all that bullshit. I said, wait a minute, this guy's going to get up here and talk to Congress. He hasn't even had firsthand experience. He's never seen a UFO. He's never seen anything. And then he starts talking about, oh, the flying saucers just come through the portal and fall on the ground. And he said that we got 75 of them and 90 something aliens. I'm like, really? And I'm thinking, well, why haven't they got their people? We would have. We wouldn't have let anybody keep that many. If somebody had 35 or 40 of our F-35s, we'd be getting them or we'd be destroying them, one or the other. We just wouldn't let some crazy race have them. And you just had to wonder more and more why he was saying stuff like that. Even the pilots who were there, who had actually seen stuff, were looking at him like, dude, what are you, stupid? There's no way they're falling out the sky. Have you seen? We'll show you what they look like when they're flying. And that's not what's going on. And that would mean they have a worse flight record than the FAA does. I mean, come on.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, really and truly, those kind of stories, you know, it's like Roswell. Roswell wasn't a crash. Roswell was gotten by the Germans. And you don't have to believe my word for it. Von von Braun talks about it. He talked about when they had it there, and he talked about when they brought it here. The problem is we tried to fly it. I think there was 3 or 4 grays on board and whatever we were doing. And what happened was, so any craft that can cross intercontinental space is not going to break up on impact. It's just not.
Yeah, you would think not. Yeah.
But a shuttlecraft or a cargo ship would, because it's not made the same. So what it looks like is the Greys were in an escape pod that came down at Mac Brazel's ranch. The ship was actually found in, I forgot the name of the town, not that far away. Corona. Was it Corona? Anyways, it wasn't that far away. The ship was found there with 4 bodies laying outside. It was found by two Boy Scouts and their scoutmaster. Found it. When they walked up to it, they said they had seen 4 bodies that looked like they were melting, looked like human bodies, and a little hole knocked in where the door might have been. And that's where the actual ship was found, intact, and they brought it back. Whatever they found at McBrass's ranch sounds like an escape pod, because when it hit the ground, it just tumbled and just went into pieces.
Makes a lot of sense. It really does.
Well, I mean, we know that the Roswell Gazette put out pictures of what we would consider aircraft aluminum. It was aircraft aluminum, fiber optics, and a microchip.
Yeah.
It had pictures of all of that stuff, which is all stuff we use today, but none of it was stuff we used back then.
Right.
So the more you get into it, but that also proves that the aliens didn't give it to us. We got it by accident. And we hung on to it for a little while. But it's also like the Greys. I mean, we know they were visiting the planet, so why would they have let us keep one of their people? Unless they wanted us to have them, I couldn't see why they would have let us keep one. Because we wouldn't let anybody keep ours. Look what happened when the Russians knocked that plane out the sky. We were going to go to World War III over. Like, you're going to give our people back, or you're going to die. And then there's the other races that are here. But the more you get into stuff, the more you find a lot of it's interconnected. But for some reason, the Greys did come. We think that's when the council or the light beam sent them was, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, because there's no mention of them before that. So the reptilians and the humans are mentioned now through our entire society since the creation of our society. But the Greys weren't. The Greys start showing up in they started showing up in Egypt probably 2,700 years ago. And here's another one for you. Before the birth of Christ, reptilians were revered on this planet. They were considered the bringers of life. All you have to do is look at the Mayans, Aztecs, Incans, Toltecs, the Egyptians. They all thought the same thing. That they were the good aliens, and they brought life.
Carved into stone and idolized. So
and then all of a sudden, here come the Greys and the conception of Christ, and all of that changed. They were no longer good anymore. They were evil, because the serpent got us thrown out of heaven. Well, not out of heaven, out of the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It really does. I wanted to ask you, like, looking ahead, what do you believe are the next, like, crucial steps for the ufology community and organizations like ICAR? Do you think that you're going to play a role in disclosure? And if so, what does disclosure look like to you? Like, what would be the ideal?
Disclosure, okay, first up, disclosure has already happened. The
Mm-hmm.
aliens have disclosed to everybody they're going to disclose to. They don't, I hate to say it this way, but they look at the non-contactee group as cannon fodder. They don't really care about everybody else on this planet. They don't even think we're worth saving.
Mm.
Yeah, so they care about their contactees and their abductees, which, according to Alfred Weber, when he did the math on, couldn't believe he did this either. I had him on a show one night, so we're like, he says, "Well, what are ufology thinks?" I said, "Well, most abduction researchers think it's 10 to 15% are being abducted." So he does the math, which came out to 1.5 billion. Oh my God, that started like all kind of crazy stuff all around. But that's a lot of people. And since the people with the Holocaust dream seem to think that we're around 10 or 12 billion when the Holocaust starts, uh, that means 8 or 10 billion are cannon fodder and the rest are going to be taken. They don't, as far as they're concerned, everybody they want to disclose to has been disclosed to. They don't care what the government knows. There's nothing the government can do to stop them in any shape, form, or fashion. And they look at most humans as they're just not ready for interstellar space yet.
Mm.
So 2 billion with advanced 2 billion people with advanced telepathic abilities and telekinesis abilities are not going to be left here. They're going to be probably taken off world. Whatever's going on, because the Holocaust dream makes up 1/3 of all of our contacts have the Holocaust dream. 1/3. That's a lot. And since they're given almost identical descriptions, it gets scary sometimes, even for me. I was reading through some of our notes the other day, and they're talking about identical scenarios, identical places,
Mm.
advanced abilities to contact these, like the aliens had turned on advanced abilities so they could help collect the contactees around the planet and stuff. Because they had found out whatever this was, and it's probably some type of virus, that the government had learned that the contactees were naturally immune to it. So they started taking contactees they were taking contactees and trying to get hold of the blue plasma so that they could survive whatever this was. But everybody else was going to die. They were going to die fast, under 7 days. That's how they describe it. And they said they would leave a city and there would be military with just mass mounds of people being pushed into graves. And every now and then, military would try to stop them, but their abilities were so advanced, the military never had a prayer. And they would scan those military people to find out if they were holding other contactees so they could go retrieve them. It gets
Mm.
scary fast, but it
Yeah.
does sound like ET has plans for us and the planet.
Yeah.
So, it really sounds like there'll probably be 3 or 4 colonies left on Earth, which will probably some humans will stay. Advanced humans will stay. The rest are going to go off world. And they're not the only ones. Here's a good one for you. Why do alien ships have been seen over mortuaries, graveyards, and hospitals? And a lot.
I was just talking about that with Preston the other day.
You know why, right? Because they can take you up to 3 days after you die.
Right.
So
That's
they just
great.
upload your consciousness, so they have a couple of options when they upload your consciousness. And contactees have already experienced this. They can upload your consciousness into the computer itself and hold it there. They can upload it into a body, or they can upload it into like a hologram body. So they have all 3 options. What they're really trying to do is, when they get near to wherever they're bringing you, they upload you into your new body. So in the old days, you used to hear this a lot. People talking about rows and rows and rows and rows of bodies in tubes on ships.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. And sometimes, like one lady said, it was me and my 3 kids. She said, but we looked different. She said it was us. I could tell it was us, but we were kind of shaped different, our head and arms. She said, like we were going to be on a different world. I said, probably because you're going to be on a different world. Because there are worlds out there where they're already taking humans and other aliens that live together in, one big happy little place. And that's where they are. And that's what they're planning on doing. They keep doing it. It's so for them, instead of just taking us and stealing us, which causes problems and heartache, they just wait till you die and then they take you.
I know, but why is it that there's like 9 billion people on this planet and only some are chosen? Like, what's up with that? I mean, and what does that do to religion? if we're all born with souls, and all right, so forget about religion.
Well,
Let's just
you're just going to die and go to heaven. The rest of them are going to die and go to alien land. The difference is the people get taken are going to live much, much longer lives. The people who die are just, if there is a heaven, they're going to just die and go to heaven or to hell, whichever one they may have been getting themselves into.
right, exactly.
If that's what they believe in. I mean, it's all really true. It's all in what you believe in, but a lot of what they talk about sounds like heaven and hell. So you kind of wonder if we've been wrong all this time, and the ones who die are just going to go to nothingness, and the ones who are kept are not. It's a hard thing to think about. It's a scary thing to think about when you get right down to it. But it's also a scary thing to think about, the knowing that they're taking people whenever they want to. As far as we know, there's no deals because too many, like I said earlier, too many people get way upset. Now there are deals for keepers and communicators. That's a different thing. Keepers can cut a deal, so they'll be left behind on Earth, but they can cut a deal to where their children and family are taken to whatever new colony they're going to. You won't get to go. You'll get stuck on Earth, collected people that got left behind. And actually, what they say is the people left behind, the contactees left behind, the reason they're not allowed to go to a new world is because some of the things they have to do to get the people out of the government's hands is not something they'll easily be able to shake off.
Right.
And like one lady says, I just melted 5 of them and then went in and got the contact date.
Wow.
She said, even today, it's still in my head. I can't get it out of my head. She says, it's like it happened yesterday. And we're talking 20 years ago. It's so the more you talk to them, the more you realize that, they have plans for us to an extent. They just, and maybe they think we're like roaches. Too many of us.
I tend to think that could be a possibility. I mean, look at there's 9 billion of us. So, I mean, maybe they do.
And there's going to be a lot faster than that. We're growing at a fast rate. So 11, 12, 14 billion. They say the planet can hold about 26 billion before it collapses in on itself. But by then we'll be on Mars. We'll be on the moon.
Yeah.
And just because they come in and take it doesn't mean that some regular humans aren't going to survive. There may be a handful that survive, but then again, they may send them out to kill them. So it's almost like they just want this particular race to survive. So look at it this way. The Rh negative people are different than the Rh positive people. Number one difference is Rh positive shares 2% of their genes with a rhesus monkey. Rh negative does not.
Yeah.
They don't. Plus, they seem to be more telepathic. Here's another one for you. That's a very strange thing when you get into this, but so about 2-3 million years ago, everybody on this planet was brown-eyed, brown skin, and brown hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then for some reason, Mother Nature, which I'm having issues with, created Rh negative. Well, Rh negative is a baby killer.
That's right.
Yeah, until recent times, you had to take a blood test if you wanted to get married because it was a baby killer and a big baby killer.
Yeah, my mother-in-law was Rh negative, and she had to get shots and things before.
You got to get the shot and stuff. So now they do have what they call the anti-denigen G gene, the shot. So if you get into the hospital and you're pregnant, give you the shot, and you're good. But before that, they couldn't. So somehow or another, this blood type that kills babies has managed to make it to almost 18% of the population of the planet now. It's kind of strange. Plus, if you look around at your politicians and your movie stars and your musicians, they usually have blue or green eyes. Why is that? Majority of people got brown eyes, so why do the majority of people running things have blue or green eyes? And if you test them, more than half of them are Rh negative, which is only 15% of the world's population, 18%, whatever you want to call it. But so both the eye color and the blood type is way low in our population, but somehow or another seems to be dominant in the people who are dominant. What bothers me about that is they're supposed to be enlightened, and it seems like to me they're a bunch of what, which I'm not going to say, because really sometimes I have to take a good look around.
Yeah.
It's like somebody asked me one day, he said, well, what are you? I said, I'm Rh negative with green eyes. They're like, oh, you are an alien. Not really. But Rh negative people tend to be more telepathic than Rh positive people. Not just that, their abilities tend to be stronger. So here's a blood that shouldn't exist. No one knows why it exists. When you ask a hematologist, because I worked with 3 of them on the website, none of them could tell me where it came from or how it got here. And they all said the same thing. It's not supposed to be here. They're like, what the hell? So it makes them wonder exactly how it got here. Because you can say it was a mutation. Okay, Mother Nature decided to mutate it.
Yep.
But why? And why wasn't it wiped out? Because it is a baby killer. And it wasn't even messed with.
Do you think it was intentionally?
Oh, it was definitely intentionally because number one reason, 2 biggest reasons to have RH negative. It's the RH-O negative is a universal donor, which means it saves lives by the tens of thousands. You know, what was the other one that went right out of my head? It's oh gee, I can't believe it went out of my head like that. What was it? It's out of my head. Oh, it's not. So what did I say? It's not just that. It's oh, it went out of my head. Oh well, I'll have to come back to. I don't know why it went out of my head. So when you talk about RH negative, you know RH negative is all of the blood types. It's just negative is all it is, and then of course O negative is the universe. Oh, that's what it was. O negative is not only the universal donor, but it's the purest form of blood known to man, where all of our hematological research comes from. Without it, we'd be 200 years behind where we are today. So whoever created it or whatever created it, even though it killed babies, it did come out with things that we needed, but not when it was created. It's all recent discoveries in the last 50 years.
Right.
So it's been around at least 40,000 years, wreaking havoc on all sorts of things. But I would bet you the Oracle of Delphi was RH negative.
Yeah, probably.
I would bet you it's not, a friend of mine the other day said, do you think, no, I said, I like to pick on my RH positive friends, but it's not that they're not telepathic or they can't be telepathic or they don't have blue or green eyes. I said, because that wouldn't be true. They do. It just seems none of that seemed to have happened until RH negative arrived on the scene. And what's that, Christopher? No, that's an old wives' tale. So you do have to have the mother's blood type.
Yeah.
Not the RH factor. Yes, just the blood type. So if your mother has O, you have to have O. Not O negative or O positive, just O. The RH factor doesn't matter. I don't know. Don't ask me. I'm not the guy who did this, people. I'm just the guy who learned about it. It is interesting, though. And the more you look into the blood stuff, the more you start to see things that you're just kind of wondering, okay, it looks more and more like somebody put this here.
It does. It truly does.
And I would think it was the Greys because they seem to have the most interest in helping us. The reptilians really, so it's kind of funny. The human aliens kind of look at us as trash cousins. And so they like one out of every so many that get it taken. The reptilians don't. Reptilians look at us as family. So if you've got reptilian DNA, they look at you as family. They don't look at you as a trash cousin. They consider you family. The only difference for them is you have to follow their guidelines with them.
Right.
And there's lots of things, there's alpha male, alpha females, and usually if they're not an alpha, they don't have a tail. Somebody asked me about that one time. They all had. I said, no, they don't. I said the young ones don't have tails usually. I said it's usually the alphas that have. I said it's probably part of being an alpha. I said, but an alpha male can be an easily 8 foot, 600-700 pounds. I said, and they're well proportioned. I said, I wouldn't want to piss one off. I can tell you that now. It's the same thing with the females. They're the same, and they kind of like humans.
Yeah.
One of the first research studies we did, we used to get these cases where women saying they were being raped or taken by reptilians, and I was like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to fly halfway across the cosmos to sleep with your little skinky butt? I said, come on, give me a break. But we started putting them under hypnosis, and we started not just hypnosis, using voice, stress, and polygraph, and we were using three or four different hypnosis and voice stress people. So we don't always like to use the same person. So it was all coming out the same. They were definitely. And then, so we decided, since that's actually happening, let's take a look at the children being born.
Mm-hmm.
The children seem to be much more telepathic, much more empathic. So far, nobody's really developed any empathic ability. I mean, not empathic, any telekinesis abilities yet. And you'll know if they do, because people like Putin and Xi Jinping will just die one morning of an aneurysm or something.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yep.
so that's one of the reasons we know there's no real impasse. Or, I mean, not impasse, any telekinesis around, because nobody's using it. But the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Air Force hire telepaths on a regular basis. And from what I understand, it pays you good money.
I mean, look at the remote viewing programs that we have.
Yeah, they got rid of all of them though. So
really?
Ed Dames is a friend of mine, and we were on Coast to Coast together. I said, "Why?" He said, "I got fired." I said, "Why did you get fired? They use you." He said, "Because telepathy is much more advanced than remote. So a remote viewer can see the missile sitting out in the yard, so he can tell the military where it is. But telepath can see the missile and go through the guy's eyes to get the code. For the missile. So it's more advanced. I thought it was kind of crappy the way they did the remote viewers, because there was a lot of good stuff came out of those remote viewing sessions. I actually sat through a few of them, and there was some good stuff come out of them. But I got a class.
Now they're just using telepaths, right? Yeah.
At one point, I thought they were going to use both.
Yeah.
Use the remote viewers to find it, and let the telepaths come in and work it. But they found out that the telepath can do both. So basically, a telepath is a remote viewer with advanced telepathic abilities, is what they are.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what they figured out, and then they tried to figure out why remote viewers aren't carrying a heavy telepathic, like maybe they just didn't develop it. So they've gone back and looked at that. But I was kind of surprised when I heard, when I was on Coast to Coast at night, and he said, "Oh no, they're letting us go." And then I talked to a couple other my friends in the programs. And I didn't get invited back to any sessions, so I figured, they are really letting them go. It's very strange, because I got like an ungodly, freakily high security clearance in the military. So it's I've got to see a lot of things over the years, and I've got to talk to a lot of people. It's so funny for me, because there's stuff like I got friends at Boeing and Lockheed and all. I can talk to them because of my clearance, but I can't ever say anything about it. Right. It's the way I busted the Stevensville case. I went to the all-women's conference in Stevensville, Texas, where they saw that ship come over there, which turned out to be an Aurora. But so I go out there, and I'm sitting there listening to the guys talking while drinking beer, sitting around bonfire. And the guy starts talking. He said, "Oh yeah," and they had these rivets wrapped around the front. I'm like, "Wait, rivets? There ain't no UFO got rivets on it, man. There ain't no alien craft. Even our craft don't have rivets on it when we send them in space." I'm kind of like, "Rivets?" And he said, "Oh yeah, Joe, and there was 2 chase planes." I was like, "All right." I picked up my phone. I called a friend of mine who worked at Boeing in California at the wind facility, and she picks up. And I said, "Boo." I said, "I'm trying to find out." I give her the date and time, told her what it was doing. She said, "Oh, you mean the Aurora?" She said, "Hold on, Joe, I'll send you a picture." And she sends me a picture of it, and it's beautiful Aurora. She sends me a picture of the 2 chase planes. She said, "Yeah, they were going to George Bush's and turning around." That's exactly what the witnesses said. It was going there and turning around. And so I called Ken Cherry and MUFON. I said, "You got the wrong thing. It's not an alien craft. It's an Aurora." And I sent them the picture that they sent me. And he said, "How did you get this?" I said, "I can't tell you that, but you got the picture now." Yeah. It's but you make a lot of friends over the years, and
sure.
And some of my directors happen to be related to high-end friends. Sometimes I even wondered if people wouldn't put me in touch with people who are already in touch with people, or were relatives or friends of people that I would meet. It was weird the way it worked out, but right now I know quite a few people and quite a few high. It's like going to testify. I mean, that was so funny, girl. I walk in. They said, "Okay, you're gonna sit down." I said, "No, you're not." I said, "You're gonna call someone from Quantico and you're gonna get a polygrapher here." And then the senator lady looks at me like, "What?" I said, "I'm not doing this unless there's a polygrapher here." I said, "I'm not gonna go this whole entire time being questioned and y'all think I'm lying." So I said, they bring over Quantico's number 2 guy. They would have got the number 1 guy, but he was busy. Bringing number 2. So we're sitting there and she's asking all these questions. I'm answering, and I answer sharply. And she's like, she looked over the guy. He said, "He's lying, right?" He said, "He lied yet." He said, "Look at his body language and his facial." He said, "He's not even, look how relaxed he is. He's not lying about anything." So she starts asking even harder questions. Oh, bam, 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 bam. So this admiral stands up and he looks over and he goes, I think you're lying. I said, okay, ask me away. He said, well, I want to ask you a question you're going to lie for. I said, that I did your mama in the bed last night. And the damn meter went.
Oh my goodness.
I said, well, you want to know if I was lying? He said, well, I want to be offended. He said, but damn, it was something that, you know.
Yeah.
And he says, no doubt about that. So we defer, after the first day, him and one other guy came up to me. He said, I want to tell you now, I effing hate you. He said, you have made me have to rethink my entire existence, Joe.
No way.
He said, none of this was real to us. No one had ever proved that any of this was real to us. He said, you sit down here with numbers and facts and information that no one could have got. There's none. He said, and you cook to a polygraph machine, no less. And the whole entire time you're telling the truth. He said, when I asked you a question, you answered them pointedly. You didn't have to think about it. You just answered the question.
Yeah.
So, well, that's what I'm here for. And he's like, well, and there's a couple other guys. So then they started passing notes to the girl because it was a congresswoman, cute congresswoman. They kept passing her notes to ask me questions. I said, why don't you chicken shit just come up and ask me? I said, oh, y'all scared ET might see it through my eyes and come for you boys. That's I see what's going on. Yeah. A couple of them got scared. And you could see, so we went through, the first day was 12 hours. It was grueling. We stopped for lunch. I never even unhooked from the machine. And I said, I want a steak for lunch. I need real energy. And we went through a bunch more questions. And the next day was, I think, almost 9. Next day was 8. And when we were done, I was sitting out, and we were at the Washington Press Club, and I'm sitting out in the hall of the club, and the guy goes, a couple of them came by and said, see, you're the kind of witness we need. Yeah. I said, oh, you mean that? Oh, and that was a question they asked me, Koresh and Greer and a few other people. I said, you mean the liars? I said, these aren't dimensional travels. I said, you can tell by the type of craft they're using. I said, if they were dimensional, they wouldn't need a craft. I said, not unless they were planning on flying around, or they could have one here and just beam themselves to it.
Yeah, yeah. I
said, a lot of what y'all was saying just didn't make sense. I said, you've got your pilots telling you how they can maneuver, but you got these two guys saying, oh, that's not how it worked. I said, who are you going to believe? The guys who are trained to find it? And then I turned right around and I said, let me explain one other thing to you. Mm-hmm. I said, I have interviewed over 60 astronauts since I got into this. I said, you pay these guys to go and find ET, but you're going to tell them they didn't find ET when they tells you they found ET. Mm-hmm. It's like, what is wrong with you? I mean, these are the guys that are supposed to be out there finding ET. They find an ET. You're telling them, no, you didn't. I said, how can you tell Neil Armstrong, first man to step on the moon, who said we were warned off the moon not to come back?
Right.
What you're going to tell him he's full of whatever? I said, he became a senator. Then I said, I was having lunch with with Buzz Aldrin and Edgar Mitchell at the Washington Press Club. I was lecturing for Stephen Bissett at one of the X conferences. And we're sitting there talking because Buzz likes to go around telling people we didn't go to the moon. He got tired of people asking him every time they seen him. He said, look, you watch me on TV. Why do you keep asking me? So we're sitting there. And I asked Edgar something. And he said, Buzz, what do you think? He said, man, it was pretty scary. He said, they were there. We were there and they were there. He said, I can talk. From what I understand, I can talk to you. I've been told I can talk to you about this. He said, but they were there, Joe. He said, both of us will tell you that. He said, several other astronauts will tell you. He said, you got the clearance that we can tell you. He said, we were never allowed to talk about it. He said, do you know how many times I went to NASA and said, what are we going to do about this? And NASA said, don't worry about it. It's been taken care of. He said, I didn't even know what to say after that.
I mean, it's pretty weird, too, that NASA lost all of the footage and documents. And I mean, they make it so obvious to us that
they just, everybody always tells me we didn't go. And I said, there's two easy ways to know that we went. One, how did you get Russia and China to lie for us?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I said, on top of that, 88,000 people tracked it from start to landing across the planet. Remember, we couldn't track the thing ourselves. We had to have the Australians help us and other countries help us. We had all these scientists watching this thing. I said, and then we had all the people working on it. I said, you're not going to get all the people to lie. And I said, a good bunch of them would have sold out for money, but none of them did.
Yeah.
I said, so there's no problem. I said, now it's not a big deal because both the U.S., Russia, and China have pictures of the moon landers now. So you can actually go look and see the lander for yourself.
Yeah,
But I
that's
mean,
right.
I understand why people are a lot upset about it. I mean, here you are. You can't reproduce the technology. You
No.
can't find any of this stuff. Yeah, I would be a little worried too. I mean, if I wouldn't have been involved in as much as I would have, I'd have been worried too.
Yeah. I
But
mean, they make some cogent points about, the fact that we didn't go. Like even if you look at the rover that they drove around, and you ask yourself, how did that fit inside the capsule? It's almost the same size.
no, but it folds up into a little cube.
Right. And then you got people explaining how that works. So there's like
Well,
always a debunking going back and forth.
well, there's lots of things. I mean, the rover was always funny to me. All the rover meant is they didn't watch the landing. If they would have watched the landing, they would have seen it pop out the side and come out and do it.
And then who took the video of the craft taking off from the moon? So like there's clear
on 2 occasions there was cameras left behind, but most of that is not real footage. That's ABC, NBC footage.
Doctored footage.
So there's a couple of times you got to go look. You'll see. There's a I forgot. It was NBC did one. It was really good too, but NBC wasn't trying to fool anybody. There was no way to see what was going on, so they made it so you could see.
That makes sense.
So they did that a couple times, but you can kind of tell the difference between the two.
Oh, absolutely.
But you can also see stuff because they do have moon rocks. They didn't lose those. They didn't lose that helium-3 either. So only way you would have known there was helium-3 on the moon is if you went there and scooped it up and brought it back and analyzed it. So
look, you can't expect complete honesty and disclosure from our government. There's certain things they have to hide, for national security or whatever. So, sometimes I think we expect too much and we have to give a little break. Yeah. Yeah.
And I wouldn't have, let me be honest with you, it wouldn't have surprised me that we didn't go, but knowing what I knew we had gone. And after I talked to most of the astronauts I had talked to, there was no doubt that we had gone. I mean, because any of these guys, I mean, I know Buzz Aldrin was offered $5 million if you would tell the truth. And he told them what happened. He said, I want my $5 million. He said, no, y'all didn't go. He said, oh, yes, we did. I want my, and he sued him and got his money out of it too.
Oh, good.
Because they went. I mean, you've got, see, that's the thing though. They didn't take into consideration. These were test pilots.
Absolutely.
Test pilots have a lot of integrity. They're not the kind of people who are going to lie and bullshit you around. That's not who they are. They had family and friends and kids. Exactly. They had lost a lot of friends. It's not who they were. But the biggest parts was how would you get China and Russia to lie? And remember, we was in race with China and they just crashed one on the moon.
That's right.
So there was no way they were going to lie for us. Not even in shot. And even today, if China was to go over and scan and not see one of our ships there, they would have busted us.
Absolutely, they would have creamed us with that. Absolutely.
So would have Russia have. So I mean, when people tell me that, I'm like, well, why don't you check it out for yourself now? So you got, it's, but I can still see why people. One of my favorite is one. It's really a good shot, and the kitty's walking behind. That's one of my favorite shots. It's a good shot too. You can tell it's actually a real shot that somebody CGI'd and put a cat walking behind it, but it's good. It's good. Yeah, but most of the stuff you can tell because, like Apollo 11 was done in all black and white. Oh my God, it was so horrible and so grainy. There was no doubt what was being seen there. Now Apollo 14 was done in color, so it was a little better to see. Apollo 13 didn't make it.
Showed the Earth. Was it 14 where the astronauts were in the capsule and they showed the Earth behind it and they said that was fake?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to see.
Window. Which one was that?
Because you can see the Earth in any of them, but I mean, and they always shot the Earth through that little stupid hole. You couldn't tell. Yeah, you couldn't actually tell it was in a little hole because when the camera's up against the glass, all you can see is space and planet. But the way you could tell if it was fake or not is the size of it.
Exactly.
So if
well,
that black and white one, look, let me tell you what, I thought that was fake for sure. It was real, but it looked like something you'd see out of one of them 1955 movies. And then, of course, what's his face? Was it Stanley Kubrick? No, it was the other one.
Yeah, no, it was Kubrick.
He come out and said that he had done it, but then his things didn't match some of the landing stuff. So it was kind of thrown out. It's but actually, so Kirby told me, Jim Kirby told me at NASA, he said that Kubrick was ordered to make a complete thing in case we crashed.
Oh,
He
that makes
said,
sense.
he said, in case we crashed the ship, we didn't want to lose face, and we could have shown that to the people for a while. He said eventually Russia would have sold us out. He said,
Yeah,
but we could have got away with it for a while. And he said, but we
that
made it.
makes sense, though.
And then a guy writes to me, he said, but Joe, the suit at the place has a round thing on the bottom, and the suit on the moon has those things. I said, because the one on the place hasn't never been in space.
Right.
He's like, really? I said, yeah, check it out for yourself. I said, it's just a suit they put up there. I said, the one they had in space, they were funny about everything they brought back from space. They were never quite sure that there wouldn't be contaminants on it. Remember, they used to put them in the trailers and all when they came home. They don't do that anymore. You get out of a shuttle and you've been in space. They're like, yeah, go home. No big deal. You're kind of like, yeah, but back then they didn't, man. They were seriously serious. But you know what bothers me? One is we had, what was it, 18, 19, and 20 were bought and paid for, and were scheduled to go to the dark side of the moon. And we canceled all those missions. And everybody always says it's because we lost interest. Bullshit. They were paid for. Everybody was trained. The astronauts were ready to go. Everybody had their assignments. I can't see NASA just saying, "Oh, we're not going to go."
Yeah, didn't China go? Didn't they recently?
They've never landed. Yeah, but they've never landed. They've landed rovers and stuff, but they've never landed people. We're the only ones still that's ever landed a person on the moon. Now, China got America a little fire in their butt so just recently, China's got 4 probes up there on the dark side of the moon. Well, the amount of helium-3 up there is outrageous. So they're saying it's going to be the next Middle East as far as power goes.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So if the U.S. and China can get up there, there's enough helium-3 to supply this world with 20 billion people for the next 100,000 years.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, and here we are fighting over oil in the fields when we have something. And then don't forget, Elon is going to be the first by, I don't even want you to Google it. I guess it's a Google is what they call it. So that one asteroid he's going after, once he gets to Mars, is worth 36 times all the value on Earth, all of it. So let's say Earth's whole entire wealth, everything underground, everything's worth $500 trillion. Yeah. It's going to be worth 36 times that. His family will be so effing rich, it won't even be funny. They will become gods in their own right.
Yeah, you stop counting. It's crazy.
It's but there's a lot going on. We're gonna see bases on the moon. We'll see bases on Mars. Everything's gonna happen over this next 50 years. There's gonna be a lot of stuff going on. The only problems I can really see is if China gets asinine and wants to start a war. Other than that, China's weird. Yeah. On one hand, it looks like China really wants to go out and do science. But on the other hand, they're building their military left and right. The only reason they had to slow down is because last time Trump was in office, he put all them tariffs on him, made them stop. Yeah. And this time he's doing the same thing, which is making them stop. Because they were forecast to pass our $36 trillion economy a decade ago. Now they're still only at $11 trillion. That's because every time they start going real good, we're like, no, slow down. We're not going to go.
Yeah, well, that's the game.
Between us and Europe, we control. I think the economy is 120 trillion. We control 80 trillion of it.
Not too shabby.
Yeah, so it's hard. It's hard to make, And then somebody, I got to say, like Donald Trump, I was surprised how well the world has taken a liking to him. But I haven't really. And everybody says, somebody the other day says, well, he doesn't like space. I said, really? They're like, yeah, he's not into space. I said, he created Space Force.
Right? That's right.
They're like, really? I'm like, yeah. I said, don't think he's not into space. He's just busy right now with other stuff.
Everything else, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. But I always tell everybody the same thing. You can bitch, you can gripe. Just wait 4 years, and then you can say, oh, we messed up or we didn't, or 50-50 or something, But he's talked about aliens before.
Oh, yeah, he has. Yep.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if he's an alien.
Yeah, look at that book, that Baron von Trump thing, that book that they came out with, the travels of Baron von Trump. Something.
Well, they say his grandfather got hold of some type of time travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it does
I don't
seem.
know. It's crazy
But
stuff.
you got to look. If you look at how he was treated in 2016, and you look now, it's way different. I'm not talking about in our country, which is way different here too. But
Yeah.
worldwide, he's being treated much differently. Two different people put him up for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes, they did. Well, look
like,
at the quote that he came out with. He said, "I was once the hunted, and now I'm the hunter." I mean, even I mean, the whole dynamic.
I mean, I don't blame him. I mean, I wish the man all the best because I want to see our country do well.
Yeah.
I'm a greedy old shit, and I want to retire comfortably. It's a friend of mine asked me that day. He said, "Didn't you retire?" I said, sort of. He's like, "What sort of means?" I said, "I haven't caught the aliens yet. Give me a chance to catch them." Right. I said, "Once I get them in the closet, we'll be good to go on retirement." Well, you got that story, the burrito aliens. You ever heard that one?
Burrito?
Some guy in New Mexico. These aliens ran up on him and his family, and somehow he killed them, wrapped them up in a big blanket thingy.
Oh, I think I heard you tell
froze them. Yeah, froze them in the deep freezer. So it became the burrito aliens. I was like,
I don't know. I don't know
about
about
people.
that one.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
I've talked to so many. Excuse me. I've talked to so many people about their contactees now that it's hard to keep. It's hard to keep. Matter of fact, I'm going to invite Dolly on just so I can torture her.
Oh, that would torture her too.
Dolly and I mean, we're friends, but I mean, it's. I tell her all the time. I said, "What kind of drugs you been on, girl?" She goes, "Joe, this is how it is." I was like, "You sure that's how it is?" She gets crazy. Yeah, but I mean, we do agree on some stuff, but you see, it's different when you start talking with keepers, which is what she's actually a communicator. But when you start talking about keepers and communicators, it's different. So what you have in the real world is you have pre-abductees, which are some people who are thinking something might be going on in their life. Then they turn into abductees because now they're figuring out something is going on in life, but they have no clue. Then they eventually they'll move into contactees once they realize they're actually being contacted.
Right.
And then so at that point it changes. So it kind of goes in stages. I'll do this real fast. So everybody's abducted pre-birth. I know they didn't like hearing it, but everybody's abducted pre-birth, usually more than once. And then usually in your childhood, 2, 3, 4 years old, you're going to be taken a few times, usually with one of your parents, but you're going to be taken. But those children are allowed to mess with other children, and not just human children, but alien children. So if they're grays or reptilians or humans, they're actually allowed to interact with them. And then as they grow along and they become older, puberty is the bitch. Puberty to about 28 is really when it's nasty. That's when all the bad stuff happens. That's when anything you've ever heard bad in an abduction happens. It happens in those age groups. Because that's when they're testing our minds, our bodies, our spirit. That's when they're doing that. So then you hit 30. What's up, man?
Is there any way we could do a part 2? Because Michelle's messaging me.
And Michelle said, mind her own damn business.
She said the show's going to get cut off, and I don't want that to happen.
Oh, I said, wait till I see her later. I'm going to hear her ass when I see her.
I can get in touch with Michelle. Maybe finish this next week.
Yeah, just set it up. But I'm at home most of these days now because I'm working out of the house right now. So
all right, good. I will make sure that I reach out to you because I thoroughly enjoyed this. You're just a fountain of knowledge. And
this is for Michelle, though.
Yeah, she's kind of getting on me now. I don't want to get us cut off. So
yeah, I said we still got 17 minutes left. What the hell?
I will be in touch, dear. Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you. So everybody, I just want to end real quickly saying thank you so much, Joe, for sharing your expertise and dedicating so much time to this conversation. And thank you all for tuning in. You've been listening to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled, live on United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM. There, I got it right this time. Thank you again so much for being with us, and we will see you again soon. Much love to you all. Bye-bye.